15 lines up, maybe a little more than that. There's 2 dots there. Rabbi Yehuda Af Malin. We spoke about carrying truma. It's not carrying, it's moving truma that's tamei together with truma that's tar. If you're allowed to do that on Shabbos, because the truma tamei is muktzah, the truma tahira is not. Rabbi Yehuda says that if there was meduma, which means a mixture of truma, that's truma, a mixture of truma with chulin, which you owe the kohen one portion of this, even though it's batal and you're allowed to eat it, but you have to remove a portion for monetary reasons. You have to owe it to the kohen. Rabbi says you're allowed to take it out on Shabbos. Now the Gemara immediately asks, but you're fixing the food, and you're not allowed to fix the food on Shabbos. That's considered, there's a gzeira to fix food similar to preparing it through malachas. You're not allowed to fix it through taking trumas and maasros. And here, although the truma was taken already, and it just got mixed into another container, but by taking it out, you're permitting this food to be eaten. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Elazar Sfirulei, Rabbi Yehuda also Rabbi Eliezer, the truma beina macht. It's already separated. The word be'ena means that it's in its pure state. And machta is its place there. The Tanan, as we see in the following Mishnah, so truma shenafel lepachis mimeya. If a measurement of truma, which is supposed to be given to the kohen, which is eaten in purity, and non-kohen is not allowed to eat this, falls into regular mundane food. Now, all the food is now prohibited for a non-kohen. V'nidmu becomes dimua, which means a mixture of truma and mundane food. Wow, now this fell off into another place. So now we have to look at the ratio. What's the proportion here of how much fell in? And then from that, let's say 1 to 60. Normally that would be batal, but by truma it's 1 to 100. So now it falls out a spoonful of this into another container. So do we say the whole spoonful is truma? Do we say 1 in 60th is truma? So Rabbi Elazar, I remember the mas k'truma. K'trumas vadei. We say the entire thing is truma. He views it as that it's separated. And what fell out is exactly the truma fell out. No, you have to look at the ratio. When you think about this, you would think immediately there's a difference if it would be liquid or if it would be solid. That would be like the first thing that would come to mind is how is this mixing? But what we're trying to bring out is that Rabbi Eliezer holds that it's separated. So if it's separated, then it could fall out entirely. If you view this truma as separated, then it's possible to imagine that the whole truma just fell out into the next thing, and I need 100 times that full spoonful that fell out. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Eliezer. It's a generation or two earlier. Rabbi Yehuda is a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is a student of Rabbi Eliezer. The Gemara says, 1 second. Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the truma is considered separated from the chulin while it's in the barrel of the container of chulin. Rabbi Eliezer says that when something falls out of the container, I have to assume that it was exactly the truma that fell out. He says, Rabbi Eliezer is saying, l'chumra, I have to assume that. And therefore you need 100 times what fell out. But no one's saying, Rabbi Eliezer is not saying that it's automatically separated. He's just saying that there's a possibility that it's separated. And therefore you need 100 times. But you're taking it much further. You would imagine this like have like the tracer, what they put in these, for these catch these isotopes that they put in the tracer. Here, there's like it's being traced, this truma that's in this container, but no one's saying that it's always separated. We're just saying that if something falls out, you have to imagine that you have to assume that it could have been all of that. So we need a new Tana. Elahuda Amar Reb Shimon. Tana's Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Reb Shimon. That holds that it's separated. Very interesting case. Truma falls in Techulin. Truma is food that can only be eaten by a Kohen. Falls in Techulin, regular mundane food that anyone can eat. And because of this mixture, really, it should have been nullified. Because there were 100 times Techulin, and anyone can eat it, even a non-Kohen, because it became nullified. There's so much more mundane food. The only problem is that before you got a chance to remove the Truma, you can imagine a little kid doing this. He throws in another container of Truma. Now you have a problem. Well, the first one was nullified. Tanakam over here says Erezu Asura. We don't say it's nullified because he didn't get it out yet. And Reb Shimon Matter, Reb Shimon says that it's permissible. Why? Because Reb Shimon holds that you didn't need to get it out. It was always separated. It was nullified. And yeah, you owed to the Kohen, but it was considered separated. So when you threw in another one, so the new one got nullified. It's not like you threw in 2 saw of Truma, then you would need 200. You threw in 1 saw, you only need 100 to nullify it. You threw in another one because the first one was already as if it's separated, as if it's removed. And that's why on Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda would say you're allowed to take it out. It was never was never mixed in. The Gemara says, Mimai. Maybe that's not the machlekes. There's a beautiful logic over here. It says, Tanakam Savar Afagav the Nafla Bazachazeh Command the Nafla Vasachas Tami. Vala Chamisha Nafla. Let's say that they both fell in. When do I say that the nullification took place? When does nullification take place? In Smicha, there's this concept of Yediyah. Once you know about it, the mixture. Over here, it's maybe the Tanakama holds that the nullification takes place. I don't know what they're going to do with the Yediyah concept. Only after you removed the part that you're supposed to remove. So therefore, because they both fell in, it's as if they both fell in together, that means you only have 100 here. That means this one fell into 50, that one fell into 50. That's how the Gemara puts it. Which means 2 fell into 100. So, and it was never nullified. And Reb Shimon Savar Kamaisa Batal B'meya. Vati Batal B'meya V'chad. The first one got nullified because it fell in. Maybe the sheet of Reb Shimon is the one that holds the idea works. That once you know about it. And the next one fell into 101, so it becomes nullified. Because the new one became nullified. So even though you have to remove it, but that's a monetary issue. So the machlekes isn't if I say it's separated. The machlekes has to do with when the bittul takes place. When is it considered nullified? We have these gemaras that talk about wine that's dripping in, yayin nesach that's dripping into a big vat, 1 drop at a time. They say rishon batal, all these interesting things. But so that's what we're talking about here. I say the first one becomes batal, and then the next one falls in and it becomes batal. But it has nothing to do with saying that the truma is always considered separated. Ela Hudam Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So we have a new Tana. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is younger than Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is a friend of Reb Meir. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is a student of Reb Meir. It says, the Tanya was taught in a brayso. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Eimer. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, "Neisen eine b'tzad zeh v'oichel mitzad acher." You don't actually need to remove it. You can just gaze at one side of this container and say that is where the truma that I need to give to the kohen is. That's enough. And then you can eat from the rest of the container, which means according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, it's considered separated. You just need to gaze at it and designate in your mind. You don't have to actually remove it because it's considered separated even while it's there. So very good. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that holds that you're allowed to remove it on Shabbos because it's already separated. Gemara says, does Rabbi Yehuda hold like Rabbi Shimon? There's a problem over here. But they argue. The Tanya, we have a clear brisa. Now we're on top of 142b. We started in a brisa, Rabbi Yehuda. I'm talking about on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're allowed to separate the truma that got mixed into the chulin, and you're allowed to take it out if it fell into 101. Got a little bit of an issue here. Is it 100 or 101? What do you need? And Tosfos discusses it before. Okay. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Shimon ben Elazar says you're not allowed to take it out. So what are you telling me, Rabbi Yehuda holds like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that on Shabbos you're allowed to remove the truma? We have a brisa that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says you're not allowed to remove it. The Gemara says, really, in concept, they both hold the same, that it's considered separated. Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds that it's separated, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's separated, even though it's inside. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're allowed to remove it as well. Why? The Rabbi Yehuda adifim the Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. He's even more lenient. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that although it's separated, but you're not allowed to actually go and do an action to take it out. And Rabbi Yehuda holds you're even allowed to take it out. Okay, whatever the case is that the source of the reason why you're allowed to take it out, that comes from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that says that it's separated. Okay, now we have a new Mishnah. For us, it's not so new. We had it already probably a few times. Okay. Mishnah says, if there's a rock on top of a barrel, the rock is muktzah because it doesn't have a use. It's not considered a keli. So what you do is you need to get the wine out. So it's not a problem. You tilt the barrel, and the rock will fall off, and then you can take the wine out. Problem is, we learned before you're not allowed to tilt the barrel if it's on a dirt floor. So maybe it's not a dirt floor. So let's say this barrel is between other barrels. It's probably clay. That's the issue here. So if you're going to tilt it, this rock that's on top is going to crack the next one. So you can't tilt it. So now what do you do? Says Magbiya, you have to lift up the whole barrel. I guess you bring it over to somewhere where it's not, where there's no barrel surrounding it. And then you tilt it, and then you let the rock fall off. So in other words, you're not moving the rock directly, you're moving it indirectly. Let's say there's money that's on a pillow or on a blanket. You shake it until it falls off. Some sort of dirt, excrement, spit, or manure. Then you can wipe it with a cloth, with a rag, without water. You can wipe it off. Let's say it was leather. This is not a problem of squeezing. But then you can put water on it. You're not supposed to wash it like laundry, but you're allowed to pour water on it to wash it off. Amar Rav Huna, Rav Huna, a famous student of Rav. He says, in the name of Rav, he spoke about the rock. That's only if you didn't intend to leave the rock there over Shabbos. But if that's the place where you keep the rocks, then the barrel becomes a basis. Basis is a base for muktzah, and then you're not allowed to move it. There's a machlekes in the achronim. If you say a basis on something for a keli shemalachta le'eser, it's a very interesting machlekes. See, a keli shemalachta le'eser, let's say, is a hammer. I'm allowed to move a hammer if I need to crack a nut. A rock is muktzah machnasatzme. It's muktzah because it has no purpose. So there is no heter to move a rock. So the barrel becomes a base for the rock, and now I can't move the barrel either. But a keli shemalachta leisser, I have excuses when I'm allowed to move it. So if a keli shemalachta leisser is on a barrel, so 1 second, if you can move the hammer, you can move the barrel, or maybe not. Maybe the hammer's still muktzah if I don't have that situation. That's machlekes. Yeah, Dr. Stein.
I still see a separate problem from all the other examples with the rock and the cask, because the cask, the rock was serving as the stopper technically for the cask. So the cask itself was a keli that was not really a keli yet that was usable. The moment you took the rock off, you now created this usable keli. You popped the top, like we were discussing. So why wouldn't that be usher from that end?
Is that clearly the case here, that the rock is considered the lid for the keli? I didn't learn that. I thought the rock was there for no purpose.
Well, but it said the whole thing was you wanted the.
Well, that's how I probably had a lid, and the rock was on top of the lid. The lid I can take off and on, and the rock. Oh,
okay.
That's the way I understood it.
I understood it as the rock was the lid, and then.
No, I think that's going to create a problem.
It would create. Okay, so we're cool. Sorry.
Other issues. That's going to complicate things. Okay. So we said that it becomes a base for the muktzah, and then you won't be allowed to move it. So Rav says it's only if you forgot it. We're going to have that several times today, I think. Let's say this barrel is amongst other barrels. Montana. So what did we say? This barrel is amongst other barrels. So now I really need to get the rock off. I don't need to move the whole barrel for any other reason other than I don't want to break the barrels that are surrounding it. So because of that, I can't take the rock off. I have to lift the whole barrel, move it somewhere else, tilt it, and then I can get my wine out. Montana, the Gemara says, the kol hechadiki isura v'hetera. Anywhere where you have something prohibited and something permissible, v'hetera tarchinan b'isura le tarchinan. You have to move the permissible and not the forbidden, like we're doing here. You're moving the cask or the barrel and not the rock. Who's the one that holds that? It would be so much easier, because of Shabbos, you should really do the easier one. You've said not to walk longer, other things. Here, you're working so hard to avoid touching the Isser. It's so much extra work. Who holds that you have to do that? Amar Rabba Bar Bachanam Rabbi Yechon Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Says it's Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. We'll see. We don't have the other opinion so clearly in this Mishnah, so it's interesting. The Tanan, it was taught in a Bryce. So we have Rabbi Barchanan named Rabbi Yechanan, says it's Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. It was taught in a Mishnah. The Tanan. Habayra kitnis b'yamtiv. If you're separating types of lentils, or beans, legumes, on yamtiv. B'shama yaimrim bayra v'oichel. Bayra oichel v'oichel. B'shama says, I take the good from the bad, which is what I do on Shabbos. I'm always allowed to take the good from the bad. If I eat it right away and I don't use a utensil, whatever the rules are of bayra. So we're talking about on Yom Tov. Beishami says the same thing. You don't have to eat it right away either. It's you can put it into a container, and I can take the bad out of the good. It's a chiddush. On Yom Tov, bayra is more. There's a leniency. Usually, you have to take the good from the bad. Why do I take the bad from the good on Yom Tov? It's a malacha, maybe an unnecessary malacha. So Vitanya, and it was taught in a brayso. When did Beis Hillel say that you take the bad from the good, which is the real malacha of bayrer? That's because there's so much good here, so much food, that if you take the food out of the bad, look, let's say there's a little piece of dirt in a big container of beans. If I have to take all the good from the bad, I'm going to take all the food out. That's a big job. All I have to do is take out one little piece, and I did it. So to save you from that energy, that effort, so you could take the bad from the good. It's Yom Tov. We don't want you to work harder. We want you to enjoy Yom Tov. So take the bad from the good. But if there's more bad than good, then obviously then you take the good from the bad, which that's the way, the more permissible way of selecting. So basically, when it comes to selecting, the leniencies of selecting on Shabbos, which that's one of the malachas, is that you take the good out of the bad. Let's say there's a bowl of nuts with the shells. So I have two options. Either I take the shells out and then I can eat the handful of nuts, or I can pick the nuts out. So if I would take the shells out, that would be taking the bad from the good, and that's the malacha of bayr. But if I take the nuts out, then I'm taking the good from the bad, and that's the way to do it. That's so here we're saying, but on Yom Tov it's not so, according to Beisil. On Yom Tov it depends how much there is. What's the ratio? If there's more nuts than shells, then you're allowed to take the shells out. Okay. Now, what does the Tanakama hold? Tanakama holds that you're always allowed. See, Reb Shimon, there's a brisa where Reb Shimon ben Gamliel explains Beis Hillel, where Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that not always are you allowed to take the bad from the good. Depends on the ratio. Tanakama holds you're always allowed to take the bad from the good. Now, according to that, we think that the Tanakama would say over here that you don't need to move the barrel because of the rock that's on top. You can take the bad from the good. We're not dealing with selecting over here. It's the comparison is a little bit strange. But the Tanakama would say that you could just take the rock off to make it easier on you. And Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is the opinion that says, no, you have to move the whole barrel because it depends on how much there is there. Well, it doesn't match up perfectly. And the Gemara immediately asks on this, says, but look at what you're doing. We just made you move a whole barrel because of a rock. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel would never have said that. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel would have said, well, you have to look at what's more. It's easier to move the rock. So move the rock than to lift the whole barrel just to get the rock off. The Gemara says, skip the word 11. It says like this, look, you need to lift up the barrel and tilt it anyway, because you got to get the end of the wine out. The only way to get the end of the wine out is to lift the whole thing up and to tilt it. So if you're going to need to do that anyway, so we tell you that if you have to take the rock off first, and then you have to lift off the barrel, tilt it all the way over, so then you're doing two actions. It would be better just to lift the whole barrel and tilt it, and while it's tilting it, the rock falls off. So it turns out that it's easier to do the heter than to do the iser. Okay. The comparison here, what was going on, we were comparing tircha. Do we make a dispensation to move or to slightly alter the rules because of the extra tircha, because of the extra bother? We said that we don't make that dispensation because we're following Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. We said Reb Shimon ben Gamliel does make that dispensation, does allow it. We said, well, actually, over here there really is no extra tircha. Okay.
This is just about Yom Tov?
Tell me again.
This discussion is just about Yom Tov rather than Shabbat?
Well, that's the problem over here. The Mishnah was talking about Shabbos, and the comparison was to Yom Tov. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. I mean, you could ask on this. Yom Tov, Shabbos, I mean, there's so many things that could be different. One's Beirer and one's Muktzah and one's... I guess it was just looking at the point of tircha. I guess. The problem is, I mean, the basic question, what Naftali, what you're asking is, the tiltal min atzad is a leniency in muktzah. In tircha, it has to do with malacha of bayr. So the whole comparison wasn't you're asking that you should do the tiltal directly because of tircha. Maybe it doesn't apply to muktzah, the difference in tircha. That's what you're asking. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Now we're up to Haisa ben Chavis Magbia. It says that you lift it up and you tilt it, so you don't break the casks that are next to it, and then you can take the wine out. Tanya Rabbi Yomer, Haisa Chavis Menachas Ba'itzer. Let's say it was in a storage area. It's like a wine cellar. They have the wine fridge. Or there was glass underneath it. You have to move it to the side, and it falls. And then you take off what you need, and then you put it back. Okay. There's money that's on a blanket or a cushion. Amar Rav Chia bar Rashi, Amar Rav. Rav Chia bar Rashi says in the name of Rav. Very interesting. Before we had Rav Huna in the name of Rav. This is only if you forgot it. Same story, same statement from Rav. Only if you forgot the money there. But if you put the money there, then it becomes a base for something that's prohibited. Amar Rabbi bar B'chanan Rabbi Yechon Leshon al Tzerich Gufay. That's only, Rabbi bar B'chanan says, name of Rabbi Yechanan, that when would you say this? That you shake the money. You shake the cushion so the money falls off. That's only if I needed the cushion to sleep on. Because I needed the cushion to stay there. I just didn't want the money there. So I shake the cushion so the money falls off. However, let's say I needed the place of that whole thing. So what are you going to gain by shaking it? You didn't want the cushion there either. You wanted to remove everything. So then you're allowed to take the whole thing. It's tiltal minatzad. And you take the money with the cushion that's on it. Talking about sheicheach, of course, not when it's a basas. When you forgot it there, then you're allowed to move the whole thing. So Rabbi Yechon is making a difference between if I needed the cushion, the cushion, or if I needed the place of the cushion. Okay. The I'd be allowed to move the whole thing if I needed the location. I can shake the cushion to get the money off. And they have some leniencies in the laws of muktzah here. If there's a purse that was left in a courtyard, the courtyard, there's other people that could possibly see it, take it. So what do? I put on it something of value, a loaf of bread or a child, and then I can carry the whole thing together. So I'm sort of like nullifying it so that I should be able to move it. Okay. Rabbi Yitzchak, Shachach Leveina B'Chatzer, Mniach LaKikar Eitinak Metaltla. remember I had, as a kid in school, it must have been 6th grade or something, I had my divrei Torah that I was supposed to say on Shabbos. We used to have to write notes. And I kept it in my notebook. And I had just learned that blank paper on Shabbos is muktzah. So I had my notebook. I remember I stayed at this rabbi's house because I was boarding with families. I remember I asked him, can I get it out? I have blank pages in there, and I also have my Dvar Torah for Shabbos. He said, which one would you rather throw out? The blank paper or the notes? Like, which one is more precious to you? So I said, the blank paper. I worked on the notes. So they say, yeah, you can move it. It's not a problem. So it comes like nullified to you have a few pages in the back that are blank. That doesn't make it the whole thing muktzah. Okay. So here, if you forgot a brick, apparently the brick is important in the courtyard. So you put a loaf of bread or a child on, you can move it. Very interesting. A leather sack full of money in a sratya. Sratya is Rosh Hashanah. It's in a plaza. So here there's a real problem.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Just back up. The other day, when we talked about carrying a child who had a stone in his hand, the stone was kind of, nullified because you were carrying the child. But this is the opposite. Here, the brick, you're putting the child on the brick to carry the brick with the child. It's just the opposite. I don't understand how they get away with it.
Right. You're right. You're right. It's not as good as what we said before. We'll see in a moment. We'll hold the question a little bit longer. And then, so here, one of the issues here is that before we were talking about moving it because of muktzah. Now we're talking about that there's a second problem, that you're moving it and it's in Rosh Hashanah. You can't get very far. You have 4 amos and then you're done. So, but you have the muktzah issue as well. So, Ba'alu v'shalos Rabbi Yochanan. Yes, Rabbi Yochanan. Put on it a loaf of bread or a child, and then you can move it. So Rashi explains you move it 4 amos at a time, and then you stop. Now, apparently, according to Rashi, there's no iser in less than 4 amos. It's machlekes rishonim if you're allowed to carry something 4 amos within 4 amos. Here you would carry within 4 amos, stop, and then continue another 4 amos. 3.9 to avoid doing the prohibition. So that was the way out. The halacha is like all of these. If you forgot it there, they allow you this dispensation to be able to use this child or loaf of bread to be able to touch something that's muktzah, to move something that's muktzah. You forgot it there. You didn't intend to. But if you put it there on purpose, and now on Shabbos you're just going to try to move it, and you say, oh yeah, I'll put a loaf of bread on it. They never gave this heter to do this. Ravashi Amar Afilu Shachach Namiloi. Ravashi says no. Even if you forgot it there, it's not allowed. This is a special heter that they only said for someone that was that passed away. And you needed to move the body out of the sun. It was in the sun, and it wasn't respectful. So they said you can put a loaf of bread on the beer, on the stretcher, whatever, and then on the bed, and you can move him. And you can move it because of the bread. This was a special heter. This is not any type of muktzah. You just put this on, like Dr. Stein was asking. What is this? What is this? The thing is muktzah. You just put something on it. You put a siddur, and then you move it. Okay. Abaya manach kappa akipi. See, according to Ravashi sort of said what he said. That Baruch Shekivanta, right? Ravashi put a spoon on bundles of grain or whatever to be able to move it. Rava manach sakina abar yaina. Rava put a knife on a bird that was shechted, raw meat for bar yaina. Okay, Umataltlan, he moved it. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef is the teacher. He says, Kama Charifish Shmaita the Dardaki. Now, how sharp are the halachas of these young people? Now, the way Rashi puts it is he's not actually saying how sharp. What he means to say is they think they're so sharp. So, and yes, because he continues, he says, that's only if it was forgotten there. Lechatchila you're allowed to do this? Just to put a knife or to put a spoon and then move something that's muktzah. Amar Abaya says, I didn't even need the spoon. And Rava says, I didn't even need the knife. If it wasn't that people would learn from me because I'm an important person, I don't need to put a spoon on it. It's not muktzah anyway. You could use to sit on it. It's a chair. I didn't even need the spoon. I just didn't want anyone to think that, oh, you're allowed to move muktzah or something. So I put this on. People should think I'm moving the spoon. Amar Rava, enough for me. I didn't need to put a knife on that bird. You could eat that bird raw. Time of the chazilumtza. Okay, 1 second. You could eat the bird raw. So Rava says that what I did was totally extra. Don't make a big deal about what I did because it wasn't even necessary. I could have moved it anyway. There was no muktzah there at all. The Gemara says, 1 second. Why wasn't it muktzah? It was a bird that was shechted. It was raw meat. Rav is saying that raw meat, you could eat it raw. You could eat the meat raw. It's fit for human consumption. Not like fish. Yitzi. The Gemara doesn't like eating raw fish. But this is raw meat. It's not a problem. So the Gemara says, time of the chazilumtza. That's only because it's fit for human consumption. L'meimra, does this mean to say, we're going on to another topic, the Rabbi Rabbi Yehuda Svirale, the Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds, very interesting, that anything that's fit for human consumption, that goes bad, and now it's only fit for animal food, is considered muktzah. If it was animal food at the beginning of Shabbos, then it's animal food and it's not muktzah. But if you're going to try to give it some sort of status now, when that's not its original status, then it's muktzah. The problem is that this meat, this bird, the Rabbi is saying the reason why he's allowed to move it is because it's fit for human consumption. That's mashma, that if it would have been fit for animal consumption, you wouldn't be allowed to move it. Sounds like he's passing like Rabbi Yehuda. But the problem is, there's no problem with that other than the fact that Rava didn't say so. But Rava says, L'shame to a shamish, Tavali baravsa. Tava, I think, means roast. Roast for me, it's probably on Yom Tov. Roast for me this bird, and throw the intestines to the cats. 1 second. You can eat intestines. Sounds like the intestines went bad. Intestines went bad. How can you even touch it? Rava holds, if it's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, then you wouldn't be allowed to touch it. It would be muktzah. It went from human consumption to animal consumption on Yom Tov. It becomes muktzah. Rava must hold that if it's fit for animal consumption, it's not muktzah, even though it used to be fit for human consumption. The Gemara says, Hasan kiven the misrach daite, the misrach, I'm sorry, kiven the misrach, because it goes bad, daite levei meyasmal. He understood already yesterday when it was shechted that it was going to be animal food. It goes bad so fast, the intestines. I guess the meat stays fresh longer. Intestines go bad. That's what it sounds like from here. So it goes. So already yesterday it was understood that this was animal food. Okay. Hachinam mistabra the Rava Rabbi Yehuda Svirle. It also makes sense that Rava follows Rabbi Yehuda. The Darash Rava taught Isha leitikanas lebeis eitzim little men ud. A woman shouldn't go in to the storage area of the wood to take an ud. Ud would be a stick that would be used to stoke the coals. I don't know what a stoker. V'ud shenishbar asel lasika b'yamtiv. In an ud that broke, you're not allowed to throw it into the furnace to burn it. If you shemasikim b'kelim, masikim b'shivri kelim. In other words, whatever purpose it had at the beginning of Yom Tov, that's the purpose that it needs to have, the whole Yom Tov. You can't start switching from human consumption, from human food to animal food. You're not allowed to, you can't switch. It becomes muktzah like that. So that's Rabbi's opinion. So it makes sense that Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda. So why over there did he say you're allowed to throw it to the cattle? Because it was always animal food. Shema mina. Okay.
Rabbi,
yeah.
people who have pets, my pets died, so I don't have pets anymore. But we have leftover food at the plate that no one was going to eat. Rather than throwing in the garbage, if my wife wasn't looking, I'd give it to the dog. Now you're saying the Gemara says
no,
I can't.
No. That food is fit for human consumption. You just didn't finish it.
Oh, all right. So that was why.
Here we're talking about where it becomes spoiled and it's only fit for the animal consumption.
Then that would not be allowed.
That's where, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rava, I don't know if that's the halacha. Reb Shimon would probably argue. Reb Shimon doesn't hold of this sort of muktzah. Becomes muktzah.
Maybe it's time to get another dog.
Barry Smith, is there a reason given why a change in status is in the category of muktzah?
You see. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it needs to be muchan. It needs to be, before Yom Tov or Shabbos comes in, if you hold of muktzah in Rabbi Yehuda's standard of muktzah, who's very strict, it's not that you set aside things that you're not going to use on Shabbos. It's you set aside things that you're going to use on Shabbos. It needs to be everything needs to have its purpose. This I'm going to use for this I'm going to use for that. It has to be set up like that. Now here you had something set up for one thing and then it switched. So it doesn't have what it was set up for. And he has, I don't know if it's mamish, that's his view, that it needs to set it up for what you're going to use. But that's what it comes out to be. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you really have it very, very designated of what's going to be acceptable for you. So that's why noilad, anything that came into being, is asur, that was never set up.
And going back to the question of truma, is that the problem, that the status of it changes by the separation?
No, I don't think so. By truma, we're talking about dimua. Oh, you're talking about why you're not allowed to take truma. Why you're not allowed to take truma. That was a separate gezerah. This is a separate gezerah, that you can't fix food. It's food that's totally not permissible to eat. You can't fix it to make it permissible, because there are other ways of preparing food to make it edible, which are malachas. So what we did is we said, any preparation of food that makes it from inedible to edible is asur. Included in that are even things that don't have to do with cooking or grinding or any of those other malachas. But we just said food preparation that goes from inedible to edible is asur. Including separating the truma. That's what appears to be the problem. Now we had truma that mixed into other things. And the Zar wants to eat the rest. We said, oh, it's misaken. He said, no, it was never really us. It was always on the side. Everything was always permissible there. That's the way the Gemara answered. Okay. Mishnah says, Bishama Yomrim, is that good, Naftali? Okay, Bishama Yomrim, Mavir Me'al Shulchan Atzamis Uklipen. This is very surprising. It throws us off a little bit. Always when we imagine Beishamai's opinion, we always imagine that, oh, this is going to be a strict opinion. Over here, Beishamai says you're allowed to take the bones and the shells of whatever food off the table. It's not considered muktzah. Why? Because you can give it to the dog. Yep, Dr. Stein's new dog. Basil says Mesalika Satavla. No, Basil is strict. You can't take it off. You take the whole tabletop off, but you can't touch these things directly. They used to bring a tabletop, or like a TV dinner sort of table. So they bring. You have to remove the whole table. The table has these things on it. It's tiltum menatzad. So Basil is the strict opinion over here. Very strange. It's a tabla kula menara. The machlekes, Shammai and Basil now would be a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, where Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Shimon and Basil holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Very strict in the laws of muktzah. Ma'avirin, we'll see in the Gemara, it's not so simple. Ma'avirin mafnei shulchan pirurin afil pachus mikazayas. If they're crumbs, they don't become, they don't turn into dirt. Crumbs. Crumbs are still have value, and you're allowed to move them off the table. Of course, if it's more than a kazayas and it's real food, but even crumbs don't become like dirt. V'sar shel afunim, v'shar adashim, those you're also allowed to move from. Deshu meichel behema. We're going to ask on this. These are the pods that the peas come in. You eat the peas out of the pod. What do you do with those pods that are there? So as well, the animals will eat them. Okay, we have to see whose opinion this is. Svaig, a sponge, if it has a handle, a leather handle, or beisachiza mekanchem, then you can use it to wipe. Of course, it has to be dry. But if not, then you can't use it to dry because you're going to be squeezing the actual sponge. And maybe it says chacham, I don't know. Benkach ubenkach nitel b'Shabbos ve'ein mekabel tuma. The Chachamim say that I don't know how to read this. Whatever the case is, you can move it when it's dry, and it's not mekabel, it's not considered a vessel. It's not a wooden vessel, even though it absorbs, but it's not considered a container. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman says, don't follow this Mishnah that says that Beis Shammai is lenient, Beis Hillel is strict. There's other Mishnayos probably that say differently. We don't accept this. We hold that Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Yehuda, who's more strict, and Rabbi Shimon, and Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Shimon. So everything, all of our surprises here in this Mishnah, Rav Nachman says, oh, this is a different opinion. We don't follow this. Ma'avirin mafnei shulchan pirurin. You're allowed to take the crumbs off the table, even though they're very small and they're like dirt. But it's not considered like dirt. You see, Rabbi Yochanan says, even, we had this in Brachas, I think, even crumbs that are small, you're not allowed to just throw them away. You have to leave them till they spoil or whatever. They're considered food. They need to be treated with respect. Shar shalafunim. What about these pods? We said that you're allowed to give them that you're allowed to move them. They're not muktzah because they're fit for the animals. Mani, who's the author of this Mishnah? Reb Shimoni. It's probably Reb Shimon, the Leslie muktzah, who doesn't hold the muktzah. Problem is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, yesterday this was considered human food because it had the peas inside the pod. Now that you've separated, now the pods were not considered anything yesterday. It was just the peas that were the main thing. So this whole thing was considered human food. You didn't look at it as two separate things. And now you took the peas out and you're left with the pods. They say, oh, this is now a new thing. This is animal food. Rabbi Yehuda would be strict about this. It's Reb Shimon's opinion. Ema Seifa, but if we look at the Seifa of the Mishnah, Sfoik, if there's a sponge, it says that if it has a handle that's leather, which means if you squeeze it, the liquid won't come out because the leather handle is there. So you hold it by the leather handle. That's when you're allowed to use it. But if it doesn't have that, then you're going to be squeezing, and squeezing on Shabbos is a problem. Asan Rabbi Yehuda. This does follow Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Damar davar shein miskaven aser. Rabbi Yehuda holds that if you don't intend, but you ended up doing that action, it's aser. According to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need a leather handle. You never intended to squeeze the sponge out. So 1 second. The Reisha of the Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. We said that the pods become animal food and there's no problem. The Seif of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda that says that if you don't intend to squeeze out the sponge, it's still a problem because it's squeezing. We don't care what your intention was. It's a contradiction. Yeah.
The picture behind me, I don't have the same law, but when I grew up, I remember this was a big thing. These crumb sweepers to use on Shabbos.
Right.
Are they really allowed?
Why? Because the crumbs become muktzah?
Well, this whole question of muktzah, and now you're separating and making, it's like, why isn't it not like sweeping stuff and making a pile? I mean, there always was a question in my mind whether or not that's allowed. I don't see them anymore, but they were very popular.
I haven't seen them either. Maybe because they didn't work that well. But
that's also true.
But you're allowed to clean the crumbs off the table, right? That we do that all the time. Usually they use a napkin. They just brush it to the side. Now, why you're allowed to...
I use the side of my bencher. It just works.
Get something else. The Shul Bulletin, right? The making a pile is only a problem in the place where the things grow. You're not allowed to bundle things, make a pile. So in other words, if you would have outside something that was falling down, mangoes, whatever you have that's falling down, you wouldn't be allowed to pile that up into even if it didn't fall on Shabbos. You can't pile it up into the thing that would be making a bundle. So outside, where things grow is a problem. Yeah, if someone has, like, let's say the oranges, they spill out, you're allowed to put them back in into the bucket. It's not considered making a bundle. It's only outside where it grew. So you're allowed to, and also this is, you're allowed to sweep. The problem of sweeping, I don't remember what the problem was with the straw broom. I don't remember what the problem was, but there was a problem with that. And then sweeping a dirt floor would be a problem. That because you make the floor straight. Okay, so the Gemara answers this question here. Abai and Rav agree. If you squeeze it, it's going to obviously it's inevitable that there's going to be liquid coming out. So even Reb Shimon would hold. So really, the whole mission is Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon would also hold that this would be usher. You're going to claim it's Eina Miskaven. Can't claim that because it's inevitable. The term for inevitable in the Gemara is psik reisha. You're going to chop off the head of a chicken. You're going to claim that I didn't intend it to die. Okay. Hani garini de tamri aramaisa shel taltinu hel v'chasan agav iman. Okay, this is a type of dates which are pretty inferior quality. So there's pits in the dates. Now the animals can eat the pits. We're saying that these dates are so inferior that the whole date was anyways for the animals. So it's not a problem. In other words, together with, you would throw the whole date to the animal. So the pits you can also give to the animal, even though maybe they won't eat them separately, but together with the food that was on it, they would eat it. Uda prasaisa, however, better dates, that's a problem because the food on the fruit of the date you wouldn't give to the animal. Now the pit of it, well, after you take the fruit off, becomes fit for the animals, but that's a switch in things. Okay. Shmuel metaltalu agav rifta. Shmuel would carry it, would move them off the table, I guess, together with bread. It's very surprising. What I did to my Gemara, I just put a parentheses over the two dots. This just throws us off, these two dots over there. It's totally a printer's thing. But what happened was that there's a siman over here that says Shin, Reish, Nun, Mem, right? That's going to be Shmuel, Rava. It's going to be a bunch of names. I think. Now, you just skip that. It says Shmuel Atamei. Shmuel follows his reasoning. Damar Shmuel, I saw them called Sarka Bepas. Shmuel held that a person is allowed to use bread for other things. It's not considered disrespect to the bread. I think we're more strict about that. But it's apparently the halacha is the note is on this. Rava metatlu agav lekanya demaya. Rava would move it in a bucket of water. Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua would look at Graf Shalrei. Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua would move it. He would pile them up, and he would say, "Oh, it's disgusting." And a bucket, like a chamber pot, you're allowed to move. It's not nice for the people at the house. So this pile of pits, it doesn't look nice. You have to move it. Are you allowed to make something like that into a chamber pot? He's making it initially like that. He's making this whole pile in front of him until it becomes disgusting. And then he says, I'm allowed to move it. Rav Sheshes Zaraklu Balishne. Rav Sheshes sounds like he would spit it out. Spit it out to the end of the table. Rav Papa Zaraklu Achayremit, he would throw it behind the bed. It means behind the chair. Behind the bed. Sounds like something kids would do. It's behind the chair. Amro Alav Al Rabbi Zachari ben Avkulas, that he would turn around and throw and spit it out, I guess, behind the chair. Okay, so we'll have to leave it over here.